you've been in the political arena for some time now, and I was wondering, what is it about this particular point in time that has compelled you to run for president? Why now?
Well, there's certainly a personal reaction to it. I mean, that's not the motivation, but in the past, for whatever reason, just didn't seem right for me. I was at different points in my life politically. So either not interested or felt like it couldn't for some reason. Either had a colleague of mine who was running in the state, which made it awkward at one point. Now, there's not that I dwelt on that, but certainly there were elements that sort of would have rejected the idea for all the obvious reasons. But I can't think of another time. And if we had all sat down in January of 2001, and I said, let me tell you what this place is going to look like 6 years from now. I think most people would have said, wait a minute, a lot of bad things can happen, but I think you're exaggerating what can happen to our fiscal policies, what can happen to our reputation in the world. Where we could be today would be seen almost as an exaggeration of hyperbole and suggesting what administration and their enablers have allowed us to accomplish here. And I just can't think of another time in my adulthood when as much is at stake as this, and feel very strongly about the rule of law, about the Constitution. Feel very strongly that too many Americans, I think our best days are behind us. As the father of two very young children, one of whom was rather born on September 13th, 2001, actually due on 9/11, being held in my arms that day from the hospital in Virginia, where you could still see the Pentagon smoldering, and asking myself, having the world changed forever, what kind of a country and world was she going to grow up in? I have an awful lot to do. I'm sitting at this table with you today. She's going to ask her father someday what we did, not just me, but you and I both, what we did at the outset of the 21st century to get it right. And I'm fearful, while things, I think our assets and capabilities exceed our problems today, I think there's a risk if we don't get this right soon, that equation could shift. And there's a generation coming along, both at home and abroad, that may have a very different reaction and attitude to who we are and how we react to things. And so I decided this was not a time to sort of, not that the Senate is the sidelines, but certainly while you can do a lot, and I'm proud of what I've done in the Senate over the last 26 years, there's no other office where you can create change as immediately and directly as you can in the Oval Office. And so for all those reasons, among others, I decided to get involved in this, at least to make an effort and try, with the full knowledge that I was going to be probably less well-financed and less well-known, and this paper has already acknowledged that fact in an early editorial, so what it means to try and break through the news, and so to speak, but I'm not worried about that at all. We're doing very, very well, and I have a lot of confidence in people in this state in Iowa who have a wonderful reputation. And I'm not blowing smoke here for the sake of trying to pander to an audience, but I've often said to other audiences around the country, I wish you'd just come and spend a few days with me. Sit in the back of the room and listen. You may not like the answers you hear or the questions that are raised, but it's very impressive to me that people they understand the responsibility. And because there is a place called New Hampshire and Iowa, among others, but these two states particularly, I've got a chance. And you insist upon about hearing us in ways that will never happen again once it's over here. So I've got a chance at this.
I want to try to draw you out a little on what you just said. I get the sense that this presidential election, because of what we've been through over the last 5 years, 6 years, is different from anything I've experienced in my lifetime watching politics. I think Bush is different. It isn't just I dislike him or I disagree with him. I didn't like Lyndon Johnson either, but it was part of the thing. You know, you have a new president come along and there's a change. Zbigniew Brzezinski, the political philosopher and former security advisor, says we got one more chance, maybe, that's this election, to reverse the nature of our government and our relations with the rest of the world. If we elect somebody that follows the Bush path, the very future of our country is in danger. I don't mean that we won't have a country, but it won't be the same. And I'm wondering if you agree with any of that, and if so, why is this campaign so ordinary? I mean, I watch you people on these debates. I've almost stopped watching them because they're, no, I mean, it's tedious.
That happens if we get some change.
Well, it must be tedious for you, and it's tedious for me. And you see people who are calculating every word. Now, admittedly, if you slip up, then I don't know. Some people just can't seem to get it right on that stage. But nevertheless, am I right? Is this really you said? Not only was this a good time for you personally, but you felt the need to do. Yeah.
I do. I mean, that's, again, I think it's, who would imagine, I mean, the idea that you'd have to, that I'd have to answer the question, when I did this, I did George Will, and I sat down for lunch the other day, which was, I thought it was going to be a lot more painful than it was, but he said to me, when Ronald Reagan ran for president, he told me two things made him angry. What makes you angry? And I said, it makes me angry watching someone steal my Constitution, and it makes me angry when I hear people think their best days are behind us. I don't want to believe that. And the idea that I would be running in part for the presidency to restore the Constitution is something I can't think of has been raised in any other campaign that I can remember.
Well,
There
Howard
were
Dean,
differences about education policy, health care, all of those legitimate issues. But
Howard
the idea
Dean
of
wanted his
defending-
country back, he said.
Huh?
Howard Dean had a line, I want
Yeah.
my country back.
Yeah.
And that goes along.
Well, I want my Constitution back.
Yeah.
and among other things. But that ought to be a stronger motivation, because I'm fearful what happens if we continue along a path where people do assume somehow that it's better to give up some rights here.
Habeas corpus,
Yeah.
they shrug it off.
No.
My social studies teacher told me that would never happen.
No. Well, I have a book coming out on September 12th. It's not one of, if elected, I promise to do the following 10 things. It's about the rule of law, and it goes back. And when I was a year old, 1945, my father was a prosecutor with the Justice Department, and tried a lot of civil rights cases and others in the South, and was asked to go over for 2 weeks to be an interrogator at Nuremberg. And the 2 weeks turned out to be 18 months, and he became the executive trial counsel of the United States and managed the 250, 300 lawyers under Robert Jackson, and wrote my mother every day from Nuremberg, which I didn't know these letters existed until about 10 years ago. My sister had them, some 400 letters, and decided, because he felt so strongly about the rule of law, Churchill and others wanted to summarily execute the defendants at Nuremberg. And actually it was Henry Stimson, of all people, Republican Secretary of War under Roosevelt, who argued most strenuously for the trial. Roosevelt was sick, and the war was just over when he died. Truman had other things to worry about. But they believed very strongly, as my father did, that this was terribly important for the United States and our allies to demonstrate that we were different. And that great line of Jackson's, it was the greatest tribute that power ever paid to reason, to have a trial of people who, frankly, having incinerated 6 million Jews and 5 million others, and 55 million people died, why would you just shoot them? Why would you possibly give these people a trial? And the debate and argument over that has still gone on to some degree. In fact, most of the Supreme Court disagreed with Jackson even leaving to go to it. But he cared about it deeply, and I grew up with it. I mean, I can't remember how the night when some point that conversation wouldn't turn up. Now, he died very young, my father did. But I thought it was worthwhile in the context of this debate, the Military Commissions Act, habeas, torture, Geneva Convention stuff, to point out there was a time, not that long ago, when there was a generation that understood this. And so they're raw letters. I mean, he never intended for these things to be published. I mean, he's freaking out over how this thing is working. It's not the benefit of sitting back 10 years later when it all worked and talking about how the thing was smoothly going.
Are these letters in the book that you're talking
They're
about?
all, that's what the book is.
I see.
And it's I do an introduction about comparative of what we're giving up on these rights
Yeah.
in the Military Commissions Act, and then just his genesis of this stuff in his letters, which again are not, these were, they're love letters. They're moaning and groaning about colonels who don't know how to try a case, and people he thought were fools and idiots. I mean, it's wonderful stuff. It'll probably cause some controversy among other people, but I thought it was worthwhile, and it's raw history. I mean, a number of people who love it because those things don't exist much anymore. So Doris Kearns Goodwin and Michael Beschloff are very generous in their comments about the book, but they love this stuff.
This is the stuff of history.
Well, because it's first drafts, and it's contemporaneous with the events, so you're getting a reflection of how things are unfolding, and the benefit of looking back at it, selectively choosing things that contributed to the results.